The Dolphins, since 2016, the only DBs named first-team All-Pro 3 times, Jalen Ramsey and Minkah Fitzpatrick. All right, here's a little more from Ryan Clark, our colleague, connecting with the greats. One Steelers legend and the next. You see Troy Polamalu and Jalen Ramsey on the little FaceTime there. I love that. Good facilitation there by RC. He lets that stuff happen. I've got to get to it. All right, now let's get right to work here with Alan. Does this addition make sense to you from the Steelers side of things specifically?
Definitely. I think it's a great addition. I mean, whenever you can add a player like Jalen Ramsey into the mix, he's very versatile in the secondary. He can play corner. He can play nickel. He can play safety. So for him, being able to be involved in the mix when you're going against T. Higgins and the Jamar Chases of the world, I think being able to have a player who can directly impact guarding them and also blitzing and being able to be a very physical player for them.
Important points here, Laura, but the versatility of Jalen Ramsey, I think, is an important part of this trade. And let's also acknowledge that the Steelers are extremely confident they're landing not just a very good player, but still an elite player, because Jalen Ramsey was paid by Miami on a new deal last September that put him right at the top of the cornerback market. Part of this trade also involves Jalen Ramsey getting a raise from Pittsburgh, Laura, an extra $1.5 million, as reported by Adam Schefter in this deal. So the Steelers feel as though Jalen Ramsey can be a player that, even if on paper they already feel set at perimeter corner with Joey Porter Jr. and also Darius Slay, acquired earlier this offseason, Ramsey's versatility is enough that they can just say, we'll figure out on the fly where he best fits for us. If you go back to his days with the Los Angeles Rams, he played a ton of slot corner for them, kind of that big nickel spot as well within that scheme. And if you go all the way back to his days at Florida State in college, Mina, this is a player who has played safety, corner, nickel, you kind of name it. Jalen Ramsey brings a little bit of everything to the table.
Man, he was such a good college prospect. People forget about that sometimes. Reflected, of course, in where he was drafted. Look, Jalen Ramsey is not exactly the same corner he was 5-6 years ago, going back to Jacksonville. But he's still really talented, I think, at a couple of things that Pittsburgh needs. And Alan hit on it when you talked about how physical he is. He is still one of the best tackling corners in the league. He can guard tight ends. He can work the middle of the field. He's tough. And I think when you think about the Steelers and the team that's given the most trouble last year in particular, that's the Baltimore Ravens. And no, he doesn't entirely help them solve the problems in terms of dealing with the Ravens' run game and all the motion. But I do think that physicality will be useful. I do think that ability to handle tight ends is useful against that particular team. So to me, this feels very calculated. You know, when you see these player-for-player trades, you have a team like Pittsburgh. Obviously, they saw something in Ramsey in particular that they wanted. And when you think about their opponents, it makes sense.
Yeah, Mina touched on it. He's not the same guy. But they don't necessarily need him to be the same guy. You don't need Jalen Ramsey to come in and say, okay, be a lockdown corner like you've been in the past. He is physical. He's a ball hawk. But when I cover the Steelers so much, and you look at the defense, but behind, it's the depth for me that I like this move. I like adding, it seems like the Steelers are all in. Whether you agree with the moves, you agree with the quarterback, the Steelers as a franchise, they are telling you we are all in, and they're making the moves to prove it. The big question to me is the TJ Watt of it all. I'm not concerned yet. I'll be concerned if we're inching closer to week 1 and he's not on the field. But Aaron Rodgers has said when we get TJ in the fold, things will be good. And I think they know that they're going to have TJ. So you add Jalen Ramsey, you add TJ in the mix. I like this group.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. TJ Watt, I mean, you can't really think about the Steelers defense late the past few years and not think about it. What do you think about how they should handle the TJ Watt situation, getting that deal done?
You know, I think for them, their defense is based around the front seven, and TJ is a huge part of that, you know. So I don't think you get the benefits of having a player like Jalen on the back end without a TJ Watt. So I think whenever you can have a guy like that on the field to continue to bring pressure and add to that front seven, I think having Jalen, you know, would just make things so much better.
Yeah, there's no doubt he is the heart and soul of that team in so many ways. All right, let's talk about the Jonnu Smith side of this trade. One thing to watch with the Steelers offense, the use of 2 tight ends. Since 2020, Aaron Rodgers has hovered around the top 10 in total dropbacks and completions, but has the 5th most pass touchdowns in 2 tight end formations. The Steelers utilized it last season in their highest rate since 2014, and then now they add another tight end in Jonnu Smith. Alan, what do you make of Smith's addition, specifically how it fits in the scheme, what they may want to do with Rodgers?
You know, I think it's a phenomenal addition. Not only with just Aaron Rodgers, but also Arthur Smith, you know. So I think with those two parties really liking to have two tight end sets, I think being able to bring him in with Pat Freiermuth, I think makes their offense very dynamic. Obviously, they added DK Metcalf as well this offseason. So, again, being able to add somebody who's coming off a Pro Bowl season, who has the familiarity with the Arthur Smith, I think it starts to be able to add some cohesiveness to their offense as they're getting in new additions. It also is some familiar faces.
How about 3 tight ends, Alan? Because I really think this team's going to live in 13 personnel, right? Because all the tight ends fit together. You mentioned Freiermuth. To me, he is more of he can stretch the seam. You can use him vertically. Darnell Washington's basically a 6th offensive lineman, I realize, but he's the blocker. And then Jonnu Smith, to Alan's point, he's working underneath. He's getting you yards after the catch. You can elevate the screen game with him. Aaron Rodgers has another outlet if the ball's coming out quickly. I like how these 3 tight ends fit together, and he's absolutely right. Arthur Smith absolutely loves this grouping. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a ton of it in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the Steelers side of this so far, but Kimberly, I'm curious, did the Dolphins get better with this trade last week? Because there have been some people who have wondered about the Dolphins side of things.
Laura, yeah, I'm one of them. I think this is a little bit of a head scratcher because as we talked about with the Jalen Ramsey of it all, talked about the physicality, and that's the type of player that they're moving on from. When I look at the Dolphins, one of the things that we've said year after year is this team just doesn't seem to be physically tough. Not my words. Opponents have said that the same. And so when I look at the Dolphins, I just wonder what the direction is for this team. Even the Darren Waller move, that's a guy who hasn't played in a minute. So I'm not sure what the Dolphins are. Perhaps perhaps you guys have a better read on them, because to me this is a total wait and see, because I'm not sure what Miami is thinking.
Well, Darren Waller did nearly make my Spotify Wrapped list this past year because I'm a big fan of his music, but I too was confused by the addition. Here's the thing about this move from the Miami side. I think in a vacuum, if a team trades 2 players that weren't likely long for the franchise for a player in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has been a 3-time All-Pro, who has not been at the peak of his powers the past couple of years, but is younger and is under decent contract control for the next few years, I'm okay with it. The issue I have with Miami kind of gets to what Kimberly was referring to, which is that they've made a handful of big bets over the past few years, whether it's trades or extensions or trades that led to extensions, a la Bradley Chubb, a deal that has not worked out. The Tyreek Hill extension, which, one season into it looked like perhaps, a mistake on Miami's part. We'll see if he bounces back this season. Jalen Ramsey as well, extended in September, now traded in July. Mina, it just feels like this is a team whose football business is often mediocre, and that's why one of the reasons why I think this team might be kind of heading towards the middle in the AFC as opposed to competing in the playoffs.
Yeah, finances clearly played a role in this. And if you want to say one nice thing about Miami, getting the contract off the books, not having to eat it, was honestly, I was a little bit surprised they managed to do that. So that's a bit of a win. But, Kimberly, you're right. The secondary has major problems. I have to think they're going to add another corner because as it stands, it's probably the weakest cornerback group in the NFL right now. There's still a few free agents out there. Asante Samuel Jr., Stephon Gilmore, names that come to mind as potential guys they could sign. Russell Douglas from Buffalo. And then Mike Hilton in the slot. But, this would be just like a 1-year fire type deal. And you're really counting on that front 7, that pass rush.
Yeah, I think all of this, leads to the points that we're making, that the Dolphins have missed the playoffs in 6 of the last 8 seasons. They haven't won a playoff game since 2000. Alan, when you look at a team like this, that at times we've been like, oh, the Dolphins are exciting and their offense has been super exciting. What do you think about them now going into next season?
It's tough. For them, they've lost a lot on defense, but as well as if you do want to start with a building block, bringing somebody in like Minkah, who's a very good locker room and culture guy, I think may start to shape things and move it in a direction a little bit. He's going to come to work each and every day. He's a hard-nosed player. He's a physical player. So I think he can maybe help establish a little bit of identity on the defensive side of the ball and kind of rally the guys around him.
That's a great point. Mike McDaniel would tell you their goal has been to avoid those December slumps. That's when they've fallen off. Even whatever they've done during the season not mattering as much. All right, we're just getting started on NFL Live. The Jags landed two-way star Travis Hunter, who dominated both sides of the ball in college, but here we go.
That's the best decision.
Jacksonville made the biggest trade in this year's draft, leapfrogging up the board to the number 2 overall pick. And now the player they selected, Travis Hunter, is trying to make his own big move by becoming the first two-way NFL player since his former college head coach Deion Sanders.
Off and left, looking for Sanders. Touchdown, Deion Sanders.
This is just so rare. But then again, so are the talents of Hunter, who's being onboarded in Jacksonville as a wide receiver, but also will be used at times at cornerback.
You know, in the pros, it's going to be the same way for me, but I don't have schoolwork, so I can go my 24 hours and nothing but football.
It's what Hunter did at Colorado last season.
Touchdown! The best player in college football!
When he played 1,481 total snaps, nearly 300 more than any other player in college football. And if Hunter is used enough on both sides of the football in Jacksonville, and the Jaguars are open to using him in the most effective ways, then he will do things that no one has seen for years.
Celebrate like it's 1996.
1996.
Back in 1996, Deion Sanders became the last NFL player with at least 8 starts on both offense and defense in the same season.
Deion playing both ways this year. He's been out only 4 plays all night.
Before him, Don Hutson shined and still remains the only player in NFL history with 400 career receptions and 10 interceptions. Following their two-way careers, both Hutson and Deion wound up in Canton in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now Hunter is starting his own two-way journey in a way that today only he can.
Woo, okay. Travis Hunter didn't just play both sides of the ball last season. He excelled at it. 86% of Colorado's snaps on offense, finished tied for second in the FBS in touchdown grabs. 83% of Colorado's snaps on defense he played, finishing third in the Big 12 in interceptions. I mean, there's no doubt he was excellent on both sides of the ball. There's a reason why he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. The Field, you did extensive video work on Hunter leading up to the draft. How do you see his reps actually being split at this next level?
Yeah, Laura, to me, there's a path to an all-pro player on either side of the ball. I actually think the ceiling is slightly higher as a wide receiver, which is to take nothing away from his defensive efforts. And Adam mentioned how the team is onboarding him in offense or on the offensive side of the ball during OTAs, which is at least in part because their GM, James Gladstone, talked about how instinctive he is as a defensive player. And so if you told me Travis Hunter is going to play a slightly larger share of snaps on one side of the ball or the other, to me, it would be logical if this team leans to the cornerback side because he can just basically go off of instincts and not have to go through the meetings process as extensively during the week. I think my cold take on Travis Hunter has been kind of consistent since the months leading up to the draft. I think it's going to be one of those things that the team figures out along the way. If there are certain weeks where they need him to be playing more wide receiver than defensive back, they can do so. But because of how unique this player is, Alan, it might be something that just kind of changes on the fly.
I agree, but at the same time, being able to get adjusted to the physicality of the NFL, I think that can be a challenge. Also, when you're talking about people who are masters of crafts at this level and guys who are playing on Sundays, you're playing against guys who are great route runners, not just good route runners, but great route runners. You're talking about you're playing against corners who are great in press coverage like your Jalen Ramseys of the world. So being able to get adjusted to that, and also, again, you have to tackle Derrick Henry's coming out of the backfield. So that's a lot to ask for a guy playing an extensive amount of snaps on Sundays. And as a person who's played in Duval, I know how hot it can get down there, so it can be challenging at times.
So, Alan, here's what I love about football players. I love that you guys, so confident, come into the league thinking, yeah, I could do anything. I love that. Here's my caution. Here's my caution for Travis Hunter. Because I remember since the combine, and he talked about, yeah, I could do it all. My only caution is temper the expectations just a little bit, because I think he could be a phenomenal corner in the NFL personally. But the NFL is different. It's not college. What you're able to do, these guys on opposite you, they get paid just as much money to stop you from doing whatever it is that you want to do. He's got tremendous instincts, but the season is longer,